Rob, this is an uphill battle for El Chapo, but the man nicknamed Shorty tonight is in a do-or-die situation. The convicted Sinaloa cartel boss trying to do something that would convince a court he was wronged by U.S. prosecutors or die in prison on a life sentence for racketeering conspiracy. Once one of the most powerful and feared drug lords in the world, El Chapo's life, since he was put behind bars, is nothing to write home about. While he fully deserves to be where he is, El Chapo is obviously not enjoying his time in jail. His jail conditions will leave you speechless, to say the least. Reports from inside the prison suggest that he is miserable, so much so that he has resorted to writing letters to people who might help him out. So what is El Chapo's life like behind bars? El Chapo's life in Alcatraz of the Rockies. Currently, El Chapo is being held at the infamous United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, commonly known as ADX Florence or Supermax. Infamous because once you're in there is no escape. At least in its history, no one has managed to break out, especially given that many inmates in there are brought after successfully escaping from other prisons, including El Chapo himself, as we will see. Just to get a picture of how tough life in ADX Florence is for the terror that was El Chapo, you need not look further than his recent actions. The man who wreaked havoc on people in Mexico has now been reduced to writing letters asking for help. The first reports that the leader of the Sinaloa cartel had put pen to paper came back in January 2023. His message, described as an SOS, was passed through one of his lawyers in the United States, as well as his family, to the Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. In it, he appeals to the Mexican commander-in-chief for help, citing alleged psychological torment and harsh prison conditions. Surprisingly, President López responded to El Chapo's message by expressing his willingness to consider his plea on humanitarian grounds, stating that the door must always be left open when it comes to human rights. "We're going to review it," the president told reporters, "but the door must always be left open when it comes to human rights." Granting his request could have far-reaching consequences for the Mexican government, as it would be seen as a capitulation to a criminal mastermind. It could also lead to increased scrutiny of the country's justice system and raise questions about its ability to handle high-profile cases. El Chapo's hopes were dealt a major blow after a senior Mexican government official downplayed the chance of any government intercession in favor of the cartel boss. Frankly, I don't see any possibilities for him, but I'm going to review it with the prosecutor's office, Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard told reporters. 4 months later, and there wasn't any significant progress in favor of El Chapo, so the Sinaloa cartel boss decided to try his luck somewhere else and penned another letter. This time, it was addressed to the New York federal judge, Brian Cogan, who presided over El Chapo's trial. The letter came as a surprise to many and revealed a side of El Chapo that many may not have expected. It begins with a tone of frustration and dissatisfaction as he expresses his discontent with the conditions of his daily life behind bars. El Chapo paints a grim picture of his existence, highlighting the limited privileges and the lack of communication with his attorney. El Chapo complains that the conditions in the prison are inhuman. He also writes that he's been in for a year and has only been authorized 9 telephone calls to his attorney. In the letter to Judge Cogan, El Chapo sends a sorrowful postscript stating that his letter was delayed because it's been more than 1 month since I've been able to get a stamp. I hope that something is deposited in my commissary so that I can submit my letter. One can't help but wonder if El Chapo's complaints are genuine or simply a ploy to gain sympathy or manipulate the system. After all, this is a man who has shown no remorse for the countless lives lost due to his drug empire. Nevertheless, his words offer a glimpse into the harsh realities of life in a maximum security prison. So, is the Alcatraz of the Rockies really that bad? Are prison conditions so miserable that they have humbled the great El Chapo? ADX Florence, officially known as the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, was commissioned by the Federal Bureau of Prisons in response to a series of violent incidents that occurred in other federal prisons. One such incident took place at Marion U.S. Penitentiary in 1983, where 2 correction officers were brutally stabbed to death by ruthless prisoners. These incidents highlighted the urgent need for a higher level of security to house inmates who posed extreme threats to staff and other prisoners. Opened in 1994, ADX Florence was designed to be a supermax or control unit prison, providing a level of custody that surpasses that of a maximum security facility. Situated in Fremont County near Florence, Colorado, ADX Florence forms part of the Federal Correctional Complex, which encompasses various facilities with differing degrees. Of the primary purpose of ADX Florence is to securely house the most dangerous and violent criminals in the United States. It serves as a containment unit for criminal leaders of violent gangs, as well as domestic and international terrorists from major organizations like Al-Qaeda. Notable inmates include Zacarias Moussaoui, the only person convicted in a civilian court for the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, who played a role in the Boston Marathon bombings. With its highly controlled environment, ADX Florence is considered an early example of what would become the Supermax model. Inmates at ADX Florence have little to no time outside of their cells, very few activities, and minimal contact with other humans. The prison is specifically designed to keep every occupant in near total solitary confinement, making it the only facility of its kind. The physical layout of ADX Florence contributes to its high level of security. The facility covers 21 acres of land and is predominantly above ground, with a subterranean corridor linking the cell blocks to the lobby. Each Supermax prison cell is constructed almost entirely of poured concrete and contains a desk, stool, bed, toilet, shower, and sink. The windows, measuring only 4 inches by 4 feet, are designed to prevent inmates from knowing their specific location within the complex, making escape virtually impossible. In addition to the strict confinement, ADX Florence employs a 3-year program that gradually socializes inmates with other prisoners and staff. During the first year, inmates are confined to their cells for 23 hours a day. Over time, good behavior can earn them more outside time, and for the most fortunate, a potential transfer back to a less secure prison may be possible. However, even in their last year, prisoners are still confined to their cells from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., with meals delivered through a slot in their steel cell door. The daily solitary confinement style in ADX must be the reason El Chapo has desperately turned to putting pen to paper. The effects of long-term solitary confinement on the human mind are profound and disturbing. Studies have shown that the human brain relies on social interaction for its healthy development and functioning. Without regular social contact, the mind begins to deteriorate, leading to a range of psychological issues. Depression and anxiety are common among inmates subjected to long-term solitary confinement. The constant isolation and lack of stimulation can lead to a deep sense of hopelessness and despair. The mind becomes consumed by negative thoughts, and the weight of loneliness becomes unbearable. But the psychological effects go beyond depression and anxiety. The New York Times tells the disturbing story of an ADX inmate named Jack Powers, who was jailed for robbery and sent to prison after escaping from another one. The isolation sent Powers spiraling into insanity. He cut off his earlobes, chewed through a finger, and even smashed his head open in an attempt to inject his brain with bacteria-laden fluid. These extreme acts of self-harm are a testament to the profound psychological distress experienced by those confined within the ADX. Hallucinations and psychotic breaks are also common among inmates subjected to long-term solitary confinement. The mind, deprived of external stimuli, begins to create its own reality. In the absence of human contact, the boundaries between what is real and what is imagined become blurred. Inmates may see and hear things that aren't there, further exacerbating their already fragile mental state. The effects of isolation linger even after inmates are released from solitary confinement. These inmates develop a condition called the Security Housing Unit Syndrome, which is characterized by paranoia, panic attacks, aggression, and psychotic symptoms. The damage inflicted by long-term solitary confinement is long-lasting and can continue to haunt individuals long after they have left the ADX. Apart from the risk of spiraling into insanity, El Chapo must be frustrated as he is not able to break himself out of jail. It is important to note that El Chapo has successfully broken out of jail in the past, not once, but twice. The security measures at ADX Florence are unparalleled, meaning El Chapo may be getting frustrated since he has finally met his Waterloo. ADX Florence is equipped with a multitude of security features designed to ensure the safety of both staff and inmates. However, we all know how that went, and in 2001, El Chapo would make his first escape from jail. Well, now he is locked up in what can be considered a fortress. With El Chapo starting to show signs of desperation through his letters, one can only assume that he has finally begun to pay for crimes.